weeks, making our own rules, then living by those rules, which I call the Steve Code.
You actually wrote them down? Why is never skip leg day on here 3 times?
Hey guys, it's Spoonie. Now I know in the last video I did say that it was the best episode yet, although this episode is even better, so going forward, let's just say the show's really good. Let me tell you about it. So the episode starts off with Lois laying in bed, and she's frustrated trying to figure out the whole Clark is Superman thing. Jimmy's alarm goes off, and he jumps out of bed excited because the 3 of them are supposed to go camping today and Bigfoot hunting. He starts telling Clark about the itinerary before he realizes Clark isn't even there. The 2 of them were supposed to go jogging before going to work, and he feels really hurt because he thinks Clark left without him. On top of this, Jimmy discovers that he actually has a rival YouTube channel now. Someone is responding to every one of his videos, dismissing his theories. So he calls Clark about leaving for work without him. Clark is obviously off doing Superman stuff, but he tells Jimmy that he needed to run some errands before work. He tells Jimmy that today is the day he wants to tell Lois his feelings.
I'm going to tell Lois that I like her.
Yeah, buddy, I think she's picked up on that.
He thinks she feels the same because she's been staring at him a lot lately, but he's not aware that she's actually been trying to figure out the whole Superman thing. Right after getting off the phone with Clark, Lois calls Jimmy and asks him if he'd be able to corroborate dates and times for Clark's whereabouts. She points out that Clark is always going out for bagels, and sometimes he doesn't come back with any. Jimmy tries to remind her that they're meeting at 5 p.m. for their squatching trip, but she ends up hanging up on him in mid-sentence. Once he gets to the Daily Planet, Jimmy finds out he's been assigned as photographer for a special project that Steve Lombard is working on. Across town, a group of thugs are trying to rob a pawn shop using the same technology that we've seen on each of the villains so far. The gang all has pretty much the same gear, which is gauntlets with enhanced strength, except for the leader. And here we are introduced to this show's interpretation of the Flash villain, Heatwave. She is called Rory, so whether this is a character's a gender bend, a sister or daughter, or maybe just a new character, remains to be seen. The gang are attacked and subdued by a figure that we see only as a blur and a silhouette. It's pretty obviously Deathstroke. Heatwave manages to get away in all the confusion, though. She wonders if he's going to talk about Superman, but he actually tells her that he wants to write an article about all the tech weapons that have been flooding the streets. He's already compiled an investigation board to organize their clues. He also found an old police scanner that they can use to listen for calls involving these weapons. He mentions to her that something about these weapons feels familiar somehow. She suggests that she, Clark, and Superman discuss this in the same room at the same time. Clark brushes this aside, focusing on the fact that Lois indirectly agreed to help him. He tells her that he cares about her. He takes on a more serious tone, and it seems like he's about to tell her something else when the police scanner goes off. As that's happening, Clark remembers that he left a bagel in the toaster, and he rushes out of the room. Heading downtown on the special assignment, Steve has forcibly declared himself to be Jimmy's new mentor. He tells Jimmy that he's the Steve of the group. He points out that Lois and Clark bailed on him that morning, and they don't really value his opinions. That makes him a Steve because it means he's a lone wolf free to pursue his own path. Hearing this does upset Jimmy. The 2 of them arrive at Metropolis Stadium. Jimmy starts to film Steve when he realizes that Steve is his YouTube rival. We get treated to a humorous montage of Lois running around with the police scanner trying to keep up with Superman. She does finally catch a break when a call comes in that's just down the street from her. She gets there before Superman. He arrives and tells her to leave because it's not safe. She tells him that she and Clark are working on a story and they need his help. She handcuffs herself to him so they can stay together and find Clark. They get interrupted by Heatwave and some of her gang. Superman disarms one of the goons, and he receives a flash of images. These include a road dividing a cornfield, flaming debris falling from the sky, and a soldier. Superman and Lois work together to apprehend Heatwave. She begs for her life and asks not to be kidnapped like the rest of her gang. Lois and Superman exchange a confused look. Jimmy is annoyed to find out that Steve's the one who's been running his rival YouTube channel, while Steve is thinking about doing collabs. Jimmy insists that he is not a lone wolf, but Steve points out that both Lois and Clark have their own separate focuses. Steve also shows a degree of self-awareness by pointing out that neither Lois nor Clark made any attempt to get Jimmy out of working with him. Jimmy's alarm goes off at 4:45, and he tells Steve that he's going to go squatching with his best friends. Lois and Superman question Heatwave about the kidnappings. She tells them of rumors that many criminals have simply been disappearing, and she's also seen her own gang get taken. Heatwave releases a blast of fire and escapes. Superman takes Lois back to the Daily Planet to keep her safe. Deathstroke had been watching the whole thing. He contacts someone and asks for orders. Heatwave is the priority, so this group can get our tech back. Deathstroke chases Heatwave into a construction site. Superman arrives and does battle with Heatwave while Deathstroke again makes contact with his superiors. He's in holographic contact with Amanda Waller and a man referred to only as the General. He asks permission to engage the targets. Waller points out that Deathstroke's armor has become even more powerful after incorporating the recovered tech of villains like Intergang. The General gives the go-ahead. Heatwave is battling Superman when suddenly she is frozen by Intergang's ice ray. Deathstroke emerges from the mist flanked by the Evangelion robots from the first episode. Superman gets quickly overpowered. He recognizes weapons like the ice ray, and he realizes that Deathstroke is involved with the criminal abductions. The General appears via hologram to confront Superman. He's the older version of the soldier that Superman saw in the flashes earlier in the episode. The General attacks Superman with the robots. He's able to destroy them, but the fight is spilled out into a nearby freeway. Deathstroke damages one of the supports holding up the road and prepares for a killing blow while Superman tries to fix it. Waller orders the kill, but the General overrules the order because it would endanger the civilian lives of the people on the road. Waller warns the General that sparing Superman now could lead to another event called Zero Day. Superman returns to the Daily Planet to see Lois still on the rooftop. He changes into Clark and goes up to meet her. He has scars from the battle with Deathstroke, and he tries to explain them away as shaving cuts. Fed up with all the lies, Lois plays things the hard way, and she jumps off the roof. She stops falling as Clark has caught her. She confronts him about all the secrets and lies. He thinks she hates Superman, and she wants to expose him. She explains that her opinion changed once she realized that Clark was Superman. She was never going to sell him out, especially with how close that they had started to become.
You kept this from me, and I'm your... I don't know what we were going to be, but that's all over now.
The lies and the lack of trust stopped any kind of momentum that the relationship had, though. Meanwhile, it's 9 p.m. and Jimmy is still waiting on Lois and Clark. There have been dozens of unanswered calls and texts. He dejectedly leaves to squatch by himself. In the forest, he hears a noise behind him, and he turns to find himself face to face with a monster. This was an incredible episode. It had humor, drama, and action. It was awesome to finally see Deathstroke in the field. His armor pretty much allows him to match Superman in terms of speed and strength. He gets called off in this episode, but I can't wait to see the inevitable rematch. Now, I previously thought that the General was a character called Wade Eiling. After getting a better look in this episode, I now feel the General is Lois's dad, Sam Lane. I think the concern for civilian lives is a big indicator. Eiling would be more concerned with just destroying Superman. Plus, the way this show is going, having your girlfriend's dad as your enemy would be more than just a perfect metaphor. One of the things that makes Superman an interesting character is his relationships, or lack thereof in Jimmy's case this episode, with the people in his life. This episode had a lot of development of personal relationships between Lois and Clark, between Jimmy and Steve, and between the trio of Lois, Clark, and Jimmy. And we do get the second mention of Zero Day in this episode. The first time was in the very first episode. I'm guessing that the images Clark saw when touching the device were from Zero Day. Considering that technology at this point is all but confirmed to be Kryptonian, it's possible that a baby in a rocket was not the only thing to survive Krypton's destruction. So this episode had a few Easter eggs and interesting things going on. First is Jimmy's YouTube video about Sub Diego. During the pre-Flashpoint Water Bearer volume of Aquaman, he had a magic hand that was bestowed to him by the Lady of the Lake of King Arthur legend. At some point in the series, a villain ended up sinking part of San Diego and released some chemicals into the water. A lot of people died, but some developed the ability to breathe underwater. We got a new Aquagirl out of it. It was kind of cool seeing Aquaman sort of having to step into this sheriff role for this new reality for these people. And just before the series ended, we got a really cool villain where one of the underwater citizens was exposed to Joker venom and became clownfish. Lois gets her Superman updates from the News Kids YouTube channel. Just another little hint that they are still around. While filming this video, Steve mentions a psychic starfish in Germany. This would be a reference to Starro the Conqueror. Superman catches up to Heatwave at the McGinnis garage. This is a reference to the iconic Superman artist Ed McGinnis. The freeway that's damaged during the fight with Deathstroke has a sign leading to Bloodhaven. That's the city where Nightwing operated out of after he kind of left the shadow of Batman. Jimmy's Bigfoot appears to be a gorilla. In a past episode, he mentioned French super gorillas, but I do think Monsieur Malin is too weird and obscure to use. It's likely that this is going to be some version of Titano the super ape. Now, in the past, Titano was like a normal chimp and or gorilla, depending on sort of what continuity. And he gets experimented on in different ways. But basically, he grows to like giant King Kong size, and he gains like kryptonite radiation, and he can shoot kryptonite beams from his eyes. And one final detail is the fact that everybody is using Amazotech smartphones. Now, I don't know if this is just a little continuity detail to keep things consistent, or if the fact that the phones specifically are Amazotech is going to play out in the future. The show really does keep getting better with each episode. It's a lot more mature than I thought it was going to be, and is a big enough shakeup to the mythos that this longtime Superman fan is guessing at where they could go next. If you're watching this video but not watching the show, I do recommend you check it out. Give it the anime 3-episode try and see if it's for you. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I hope you join me for the next episode. Bye.